Okay everyone, so for now let's just go work with our project here that is related to React. And when we talk about React, this is a, let's create an index.html here, and let's have an HTML5 just as an intro for React introduction. So when we say React, this is, let's have a UL here, li. React is a JavaScript library created by Facebook around 2011, if we try to look into its history. So it's a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. So it is used for building user interfaces. It's a library. It is a library used for building interfaces. And React here is a tool for building UI or user interface components. So this will be allowing us to be able to reuse these components depending on the use case or depending on how we would want to create our web application. So let's have an H1 here. Introduction to React. Let's open this up on File Explorer just to have an idea. Okay, so at least we now have a website here from where we have the introductory of React. So one of the first thing that you need to be aware of is that when you are learning how to use the React library, we need to be at least we need to have at least a basic understanding of the following. So number one, let's have an H2 here. Basic requirements for learning React. Let's have an OL. Number one will be, let's have 6. So first one, you need to know what is HTML. You have to understand some basics of the HTML language. What is CSS? So this is another thing that you should be aware of, because we will be combining most of our components, and we will be implementing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all together in using React. And we should be aware of the document object model and what is ECMAScript ES6, which is related to JavaScript. So one of the most important thing before you learn React is you get to have at least a good foundation in JavaScript. And we will also be learning how to use Node. And what are package managers? What is NPM or Node package managers? So these are some of the very basic things that you should be aware of when you're learning how to use React. And let's say here, let's go and try to this is going to be using Babel. So when you say Babel, if you try to search Babel on the web, Babel, let's say Babel JS, where's that? Babel JS. So Babel is a compiler for the next generation JavaScript. If we try to get in here and we try to check out, we have here the JavaScript, and it will be outputting the following example here. So let's see if we can have some sort of setup here. Okay, so there are some docs here that we can try to check out. So we can Babel can basically convert JSX syntax, and we have the following command. We are exporting a default function dice roll here. and there's this. Okay, so let's not go deep into here, but just basically Babel is a compiler for JavaScript, for us to be able to use JavaScript. And if we try to read through some of the documentations here, Babel, learn more about Babel, we're getting started guide. Let's start it. It is a toolchain that is mainly used to convert ECMAScript 2015 plus code into backwards compatible version of JavaScript in current and older browsers of environment. Here are the main things Babel can do for you. It can transform syntax, polyfill features that are missing in your target environment, source code transformation, and more. Okay, so that's just the idea there. So if we try to let's have a script here that we will be loading the React API, and let's have another script here that will be loading the Babel. So we have the Babel min.js here, and inside of our body here, let's have a script from where we will be placing. Let me just copy paste this. The script that is going to be inside of our document. So this is going to be a compiler that will be translating markup or programming languages into JavaScript. So with Babel, you can be able to use the newest features of JavaScript such as ES6 or ECMAScript 2015, and it is available for different conversions and will be used by React to convert JSX into JavaScript. So what is JSX first? What is JSX? Let's have another H2 here. So when we talk about JSX, this is it stands for JavaScript XML or Extensive Markup Language, and it is also an XML or HTML like in extension to JavaScript. So let's say we have let's have a script here, intro.js. Let's have a const element. Here's the basic format. So you would see we will have an h1, and we have a hello world here, and this is not JavaScript nor HTML. It's a combination. We are putting an HTML element here inside of a constant element, and we can see here JSX is an XML syntax extension to JavaScript. So that's another thing to take note of. Syntax extension to JavaScript that will come with the full power of ECMAScript or ES6. So similar with HTML, it uses tag names. So let's have that as a definition. Similar with HTML, it uses tag names, attributes, and children elements or children. And if an attribute is wrapped in curly braces, the value is a JavaScript expression. So later on we'll see what that will be doing for us. So if we try to just play around with this for a while, let's see if we actually this should not be doing anything, but I just want to run node.js, no intro.js. This will not be there's an expected constant here. Let's see if console.log. I'm just going to experiment for a while, guys. Element. Let's see what that will be doing first. So So there's an unexpected extension here. So I think we still need to do something here, and that is we're running an error. So what we need to do here is to try to go and let's see here, used our div with an ID of, let's say, ID01, and we leave this with the hello world text, and inside of our text bubble here we will be using the react dom dot render, and you would see here, oops, sorry, react dom dot render, and it should be here, and you would want to put here hello react h1 and document that get element by ID, and we have ID01, and now let's try to see that on our browser. Where's that? And there we go. We were able to print here. Did we do this correctly? We need to have, sorry, this is going to be similar. Let's see. Let's try to test out whether this will work. We have a div ID hello world, hello react. It's only allowing us to see the hello world. Why is that happening? Let's see if we try to, did I copy? There we go, we have some missing. Production, Babel. Let's see if this will work now. What is that error showing us? Okay, we don't have a semicolon. No? Is there a semicolon? Oh, we did not close this. What is it saying? Or statement expected that JavaScript. React DOM dot render. We should have a render hello react 1. This should be working. Let's see. We have the get element by ID h1 render. What are we missing here? I think we had to have that, and this one should be, sorry guys, that should be there. Made a mistake with my semicolon there, and it's still not working. Why is that? Should be able to replace this. Let's see what's happening in our console. We have an error. Warning, error. React DOM is not defined. Did we? I think we didn't. We did something here that's missing. React DOM is not defined. We are using Precompile here. So let's see, let's just do some troubleshooting here. We're missing something here. Why is this not working? The act DOM is not defined. Okay, it should be React DOM render. So actually I found this. Let's see if that will be working now. And there we go, we have the hello React. So I actually just found this and it says here it's React DOM, not React DOM. So that's a good thing. Let's take note of that. Let's see. Stack Overflow. That's a good. It's answer to bug. That means it's React DOM, not React DOM. Okay, so you have to be careful with your typo here. So you would see here, guys, that we were able to run and manipulate HTML content, the hello world here, and we were able to insert hello React h1 that replaced the hello world text in our root or ID01 here. Usually we utilize this as a root. Most of the time we will be utilizing the term root because we usually work with the root node or the root element when we are working with the React elements, and it's going to be built on a single HTML element, and that is this div element here. Okay, so that's just something to take note of. That's why we changed this to root, and we can try to refresh our close this, go back here, and it's still rendering that content. Okay, now if we talk about JSX expressions, we can do this by wrapping them in curly brackets. So let's say we have here hello. Let's have a script here with let's have a value of const name, and let's have John Doe, or let's say Rod Lopez, and we want to go and utilize JSX. We just wrap them here, and now if we try to run this, let's see what will happen. And we now can see that we were able to manipulate the content of that HTML using a variable that we have declared inside of our script type text babel here with the value of attribute text babel. And you would see we were able to utilize a combination of a JSX expression with the use of the curly brackets, and we were able to acquire the value of our name variable Rod Lopez through declaring it inside of the React DOM render. This is a method, and React DOM, if we try to search what is the React DOM, that would say the React DOM package also provides modules specific to client and server apps. React DOM client, React DOM. it's a package that provides DOM specific. So let's go and state that here. Let's have a horizontal rule here, so that we'll have a, if we have a question, what is the React DOM? Let's have an H3 in this case for frequently, H2 for frequently asked questions. And if we try to go down here, we can now see that we have an answer that the React DOM is a package that provides DOM specific methods that can be used at the top level of a web app that will enable us to be efficient, us to efficiently manage the document object model elements of a web page. It provides page, another P element here. It provides an API containing methods. So that means we can try to list down some methods. Let's see some methods, and let's say we have here the li times 5. We have the render method, which is something that we have just recently used. We have the find DOM node. So again, we will not be able to cover all of this, but at least you will get some ideas here. We have the component at node, and we have a hydrate method, create portal. So that is what the React DOM can provide to us. Okay, so those are some functions that had been written already by the developers of React. So that's just something to take note of. Now moving forward, when you talk about the React elements, as we talked about, it will have the root. It will normally be composed of a single HTML element, and in this case we have the div root here that we manipulated using the JSX expression. So, and what is currently happening here? So let's see. Example 1, explanation. So in this case, what's currently happening here? We have here in, let's have an li, elements are being rendered or displayed with the React DOM.render method, and this is just a function that has been pre-built. If you try to look at it, the open and close parenthesis is pertaining to a signifier from where we can set some parameters, and in this case we have a parameter from where we have a JSX syntax combined with HTML, and we're using also the var document, or the document that is pertaining to the index.html that we have here. We have the accessory character here, and we have a method also, and you will see we have the element ID and then the string. So this is going to be the element ID that is pertaining to the div ID that we have here, and that's why we were able to reference this root ID by targeting the element content of this root element, and we were able to replace it with this element we were able to replace the content that is being rendered here with the use of the h1 element with the JSX syntax with a variable name that has an assigned value of Rod Lopez. Okay. So one thing to note of, let's have a note here, or let's have a strong element, strong note. React elements are immutable. So let's emphasize this also. Let's have a strong tag here. And when we say immutable, that is just saying that they immutable means that they cannot be changed. Okay, and the only way we can try to change the React element is to render a new element every time. Okay, so let's go back to our list. We're creating some notes here. The React DOM is a package that provides DOM specific methods that can be used at the top level of a web app. And we can see here, example 1, elements are being rendered displayed with the React DOM render method. React elements are immutable. Immutable means that they cannot be changed. The only way we can try to change the React element is to render a new element every time. Okay, so those are some notes. First, that displayed made a mistake with the. So I'm just going to create this as introduction to React notes that we can try to utilize here. Okay, so I hope that got you some idea here. So let's say let's have example 2. So this is going to be example 1. Example 1. And for the example 2, let's have function. We want to have a name tick. Let's just see what this will be doing here. We'll have a const element, and we'll be assigning it inside of that. We'll have an h1. This is h1, and let's have inside of this. Let's have a new object date that to local time string, and let's close this up, and then let's go and try to think const. We have the const here. So now let's see. I think I made a mistake here. We should not have this. We should have the new date h1. Let's have this on a single line so that we won't be getting confused. There should be no. Then let's have the React DOM dot render. We want to target the element, and document dot get element by ID. We're going to target the root here, and let's save that, and let's have a set interval that will be allowing us. This is a function. It's like an API from where it's been written for us, that will have a handler, timeout, and we can see here the number that we need to specify, 1000 milliseconds. Let's try to see what this will be doing for our project here. And now we have changed that div element, root element, into a timer. We were now able to turn it into a timer. Okay, so you would see there we maximize the use of some values here. So we use the method react.render, or we use the React DOM, which is a package that provides us access to methods like the render method, and in this case we declared here a JavaScript expression JSX variable here that we were able to render the first time, and we were able to display Rod Lopez here because this is the first variable that we have specified here, and this was overwritten by this function tick that we called, and we have used a set interval method again that has been a pre-written method or function that has the ability to provide us with a timeout or timer handler, and we gave it a 1000 milliseconds here, and that is now able to provide us with the ability to render on our document object model, and we replaced the content of the div element that will be through the use of the function. So we can see here the only way we can try to change the element is to render a new element every time. So that means we rendered a new element here. Let's say this is element 2. Okay, and this is element const 1, which is an h1, and we rendered here another h1 that actually replaced the first declaration that we, or the first rendering that we did for hello Rod Lopez, right? So now we have that timer running on our document here. So React components are JavaScript functions generally. So let's add that as a note, or let's have h2 here. React components. What are React components? Let's have a HR here. What are React components? So React components are basically JavaScript functions. They are functions. So let's say, let's have an example. Let's create another function here. But this time, let's try to call a welcome function. This is just a function that we would want to return, and that will be h1, and welcome to our React tutorial, basic React tutorial. Okay, now of course, for us to be able to render this again, let's see, that will not do anything. Hello Rod Lopez, what are React components? We were able to go through there. Now let's go and try to render the React DOM one more time, and because of the format from where we have this working for us, and now you would see we are going to use this format. Welcome, this is a component that we have created by calling this function welcome here, and we want to target the document that get element by ID root. And if we try to run this one more time, and there we go, we have that welcome, but this is happening because we have a time interval. If we try to refresh this again, okay, I think we should have, let's try to control KC this. This is going to be our example. Let's just have this as example 3. This one is going to be example 2, and this is going to be example 1. Okay, so let's see what will be happening here. Welcome to our basic React tutorial. So technically we replaced the content of the div element by declaring a function, or by using a function that rendered the content of this component that we have here, which is basically a function that contained a return keyword that is trying to return the value of this h1 element to our React DOM React DOM package here that is accessing the render method, or another form of function. And we have on the first value, you would see that if we try to hover, let's see if we have some sort of function welcome. It's referencing the function welcome here, and we have the document.getElement by ID root, which is the second parameter that we are trying to fill out so that we can go and target the div ID root that we have here. Okay, so that's the one that we're trying to target here. So that's basically what the components are. We are able to use and create these are just simply functions that we try to utilize for being able to manipulate the div or the root element content, or and we are trying to render some values, or let's say in this case an h1 element content, an h1 element with the following element content onto our browser. Okay, so we can also have here some notes. Another things to take note of is that React can also use ES6 classes to create components. So let's have an example of that. So we have functional based programming and class based programming. That's just the thing here. So we can utilize React. So in this one we have h3 here, function based components, and we also have the class based components. So in ECMAScript we already have the term or keyword classes. So this is how that would look like. So let's have an example 4. And we try to create a class here. It's like a function that will have the following keyword, and we are extending the React component, and we have a curly bracket here, and we're accessing the render method here, and we would want to return some values here with the h1. Let's close that. Oh, that should be here, and inside of this should be hello, this is a class based component. Okay, so that's a class based component. Let's have the, let's target the React DOM that render, and let's have the welcome component here, and again we'll do the same process as the first one, the function based component. Let's replace this with welcome to. Let's just say welcome to here. Get element by by ID, and we're going to be targeting that root element. And if we try to check this out, we can now have this class-based components. And hello, this is a class-based component. As you can see there, guys, we were able to implement what was written in our render, or in our class-based component here that contains the welcome to component that is extending the react.component. I think if we try to search what this is, you would see that what is the react.component. Okay, is the base class for a when they are defined using ECMAScript classes. See the React component API reference for a list of methods and properties related to this base. So React components are independent and reusable bits of code. They serve the same purpose as JavaScript functions but work in isolation and return HTML. Components come in two types: class components and function components. Okay, so those are the things that we've been talking about. So that's the idea here, guys, for the class-based components. And let's talk about some React properties. Let's have HR. Let's have H2 again here. React component properties. Now, so in this example, we will be let's go and try to in this next example, or in example 5, we will create React component named welcome 3 with some property arguments. Okay, so let's so that means we will be using props in this example 5 here. I think it should be example 5, sorry. We're already at okay, that's correct, example 5. So properties. So let's have a function here that we'll call welcome 3, and we'll have props or properties, and we'll be returning an h1 hello props.name variable here, JavaScript JSX, and let's close this h1 here. And now we do want to render this using the React DOM.render, and what we want to do here is welcome name John Doe, or let's say L Sid, and in this case we are accessing that component, and you would see the format now that we're doing here is get element by ID root. So this is just the same here. We have the component, but in this case we are accessing a property. It's like in HTML we have attributes, right? Property attributes. You'll see we are able to access this props.name, basically that prop that name here, and we gave it a property name value of LC. So let's see what this will be doing for us. Let's just try to check out what that will be doing for us. Let's see, I think I did something here. Let's first try to just to be able to check out return hello props.name. Let's see. So we're assigning a value to the props parameter here, and we're trying to access this property that is inside of the welcome tree. Okay, that's why I wasn't able to have it rendered. Let's see. Did that render properly? No, that did not render properly. What did I do wrong? We have props name, welcome tree, React render. Let's see our spec element. We have two. Props is not okay. Let's see. We can see that there's some sort of an error here. HB props. Sorry. Let's see if that will work now. And there we go. We were able to render this. Let's just test out. Let's let it remove this. I'm just going to, because we're not calling the function there, right? We're not calling the class function, the function based component here. I think this should be working. Just to experiment out. So technically, it's still working. So there we go. We were able to implement hello LSID, and that allowed us to utilize these components, this welcome tree component with a parameter that we were able to access the attribute that we have placed inside of our welcome tree component here, because we are returning this h1 and we wanted to manipulate the value of the dot name property that we have placed inside of our declaration here for a React component that contained a property. So this means LSID, or we can replace this with, this is a React property. Okay, if we try to refresh that, hello, this is a React property. So we can easily manipulate part of our HTML document using React itself. So again, that's the power of React. We are able to utilize components for us to be able to manipulate some components of a specific project that we're working on, or some parts of our HTML document object model. And in this case, we're trying to manipulate the div element, and we were able to replace its content with the h1 with the value hello, and we are accessing this name property. And again, this is a name property that we have declared inside of the declaration for our welcome tree function that has a property component. And again, I can say this is LSID, excuse me, the unconquerable general. Okay, so let's see here what that will be showing up here. That should be replacing this value, and there we go, LSID the unconquerable. Is that the correct? I'm not sure if that's the correct spelling for that. Unconquerable. Yes, the unconquerable general. Okay, so that's what React component properties are. So some other things to note of would be, let's go back out here. Let's have a script here. Script. We're just using, but you can try to, because this is now HTML. We would want to utilize the HTML comment tag, of course. Scripts. Examples. Okay. Now let's go and have here another HR. No, let's just have an HR. Yep, HR line. There's this, let's have h2 from React can use ES6 classes to create components with props. Let's see here. So example 6. In example 6, we will create a React component named welcome4 with property arguments in this case. Okay, so if we move down here, let's have an example 6 here, and let's also go for function welcome4. Sorry, we're not going to be using function based components. We'll be using class welcome4 extends react.component, and again, that's the format for declaring a class-based component in React that is utilizing the ECMAScript 6 ES6 format. And we have the render method here, and we want to, so this is a function that doesn't have an argument. If you remember in our discussion, there are functions that doesn't have any arguments. So in the, depending on the use case, we can try to utilize that. And we have h1 here, h1, and let's close that up. And inside of this, let's have a hello. So we just need, we'll use JSX this dot props dot name, and you would see this is running an error because this should be in a single line. I think React needs this to be on a single line. It will not render if it's not on a single line. Am I correct? So return. Made a mistake there. There should be, it should be a function. Let's see here. Yeah, extra. This should be outside, and there we go. Hello. Hello. Again. Class. Hello again. Let's have a React DOM.render with a component. Let's not make that welcome4. Then let's have a name for that. The GUI or the GUI. Hello, name the GUI. That's one of my. And again, we will target the document that get element by ID root here. So we have the two value parameters or values that we want to be rendered using this function in our script that will be targeting this return function. I think this is going to be a return function. Am I correct? Yep. And we have the HTML, we have the JSX, we have the this keyword that is pertaining to this function. This is referring to this function here, function scope, and we are targeting the props property, which is the name, and we have the name value here that is being referenced, that we declared inside of the React DOM render method that will be used for us to be able to render the value supposedly here if we did not make any mistake here. And again, hello again, the GUI that appeared, and we were able to render and manipulate the content of our div root element. So there are some rules that we have to look into, especially if we will be playing around with React. So we'll talk more about that as we go along and build some more projects. Okay, so that's it for this very basic introduction to React. So we were able to create React notes through the use of this lesson. So thank you, and let's move forward to creating some more projects with a series of lessons that we will be having for React.